Happening. A good Monday afternoon to all of you. Thanks for joining me. As always, it is very much appreciated. We have a ton to get to during today's podcast, and I mean a ton. But before we get to anything, don't forget to take a second of your time. Does it cost you anything to give a thumbs up to this YouTube video? Give that thumbs up. Help beat the algorithm. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on Twitter, you can also like this podcast as well as you watch it. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this Nick Cattle Show pod, to this YouTube channel. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Pods, you can rate and review. Help us out. Let's start with Brandon Aiyuk. Aiyuk is back in the news. Let's run through all the latest reporting that we have about the Aiyuk situation. Cam Marino from the NFL Draft Buzz, he tweeted that the Patriots and the Browns were front runners for Aiyuk. So the Patriots, the Browns, the two teams at the front of the line for Aiyuk. That was according to Cam Marino going back about 24, 36 hours ago. Matt Mayoko, very plugged in at NBC Sports Bay Area. He did not shoot that down. He didn't shoot down the reporting from Cam Marino. And in the column that Mayoko wrote, he included the Patriots in the conversation, talking about maybe them dealing Kendrick Bourne along with some Pats picks that they have in the draft next year. That is an idea that I believe Michael Holley threw out going back several weeks ago. Did Holley hear something regarding Bourne and picks for Aiyuk? I don't know. Then Adam Schefter went on the Pat McAfee show today. And it was very interesting what Schefter said. He said that Aiyuk has to accept a contract from the team that is trying to deal for him. And I think that shed a new light onto the situation. Gathering from what Schefter said, it felt to me like this was a message to these teams that Aiyuk might not be interested in joining those organizations. He might not be interested in playing for some of the franchises that have been brought up. Maybe the Patriots, maybe the Browns. Maybe he's not thrilled with the idea of playing with either of one of those two teams. Because Schefter's saying that Aiyuk has to accept the terms of the deal. He's got to take the contract. And that he has some leverage in this. It just felt like Aiyuk's team, quote unquote, his representation was getting this out there that, hey, look, you can want to trade for my guy. You can want to trade for him and give all the money that you can give and put that money on the table. But he might not be in love with the idea of playing for you. And then we had Andrew Filipponi from 93.7 The Fan in Pittsburgh. And he tweeted out that the Pittsburgh Steelers were working hard on a deal for Aiyuk and that a deal could actually get done soon. And then we had the very latest. This came about 60 minutes ago, less than 90 minutes ago. We go back to Cam Marino, who had the initial tweet about the Patriots and the Browns being the front runners for Brandon Aiyuk. And here's what Marino tweeted just about 1 hour ago. Pittsburgh is gaining traction with these talks. And Marino actually said that the Steelers, even though the talks are fluid between the 49ers and all of these teams, Marino now says Pittsburgh is Aiyuk's preferred destination. Now, I don't think that's a coincidence, right? Schefter goes out there and he says, hey, look, he's not going to play just for anybody. He is going to accept the terms from a team that he wants to play for, that he wants to play with. He has a say in this. And then shortly after, we hear Marino, who originally said the Browns and the Patriots were front runners. Now we're hearing from the same guy. Hold on, wait a minute, pump the brakes. The Steelers are actually the preferred destination. It just feels to me within the last couple of hours that Aiyuk is trying to push his way to Pittsburgh. Now, I don't know why that would be. Pittsburgh has Russell Wilson, who is washed. They have Justin Fields, who is just as much, if not more, of an unknown than Drake May, given his history and what he's done in the league. But it seems to me, between the Schefter stuff he said on the Pat McAfee show and what Cam Marino, how Marino has adjusted his reporting from the last 36 hours to the last hour, it seems to me like Aiyuk is trying to force his way to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He wants to go to Pittsburgh. He might not be in love with the idea of Cleveland or New England. Does that mean he's going to go to Pittsburgh? Not necessarily. The Niners have to like what Pittsburgh is offering them, right? And the other part of this, which I found interesting, according to Marino, that even though Pittsburgh is the preferred destination of Aiyuk as of right now, this minute, August 5th, 2024, 4:05 Eastern, even though Pittsburgh is the preferred destination of Aiyuk, there have been stronger offers on the table from other teams. So let's just put two and two together. Sounds like the Cleveland Browns and the Patriots have been very aggressive. They've been trying to land Aiyuk, and they have stronger offers on the table than what Pittsburgh is offering. Now, of course, if you're Pittsburgh, then why in the world are you going to put the best package on the table for Aiyuk as far as assets go when you know it's had to be communicated to them that Aiyuk wants to go to Pittsburgh? If the Steelers know that they are the preferred destination of the player, they probably don't feel like they have to bend over backwards as much as the Browns and Patriots do to get San Francisco to be willing to part with the receiver. Now, if you're the Patriots and you're offering as much as you can offer, and obviously, again, from Cam Marino, there are stronger offers from teams other than Pittsburgh, which I read to be the Patriots and maybe the Browns. It doesn't matter how much you're willing to give up if Aiyuk doesn't want to be here, because you're not going to give up significant draft capital. You're not going to give up legitimate assets to bring Aiyuk here if he's not willing to sign a long-term contract. It would be an epic disaster if the Patriots traded for Aiyuk, and let's say they gave up their second-round pick in next year's draft to go along with maybe another pick in next year's draft. Let's say this is the framework, and I'm just throwing this out there. This is a hypothetical to make my point. Let's say the Patriots offer a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick in next year's draft for Aiyuk in a sixth, or just Aiyuk if you don't want the late-round pick included, right? Well, the Patriots, they're not going to feel, Elliott Wolf is not going to feel super confident in giving up a second and fourth-round pick in next year's draft in that hypothetical trade package for a guy who's going to be here 1 year. Doesn't make any sense. You don't want to do that. That is just a disastrous idea. It's a terrible plan. The idea is that you would bring in Aiyuk, who's in his mid-20s, so he can be here for the next 3, 4, 5 seasons, maybe even longer than that, right? You don't want to do a short-term kind of deal because you're giving up assets for short-term gain during a rebuild. It would make no sense. So if Aiyuk and his representation, if they're drawing a hard line and they're saying, no, we want to go to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is our preferred destination. If you don't send us to Pittsburgh, we're not going to talk contract. Now, that's hard to believe because Aiyuk seemingly wants to get paid. He right now is with a Super Bowl contender. He's with the team that won the NFC just last year. And it's very difficult to believe that Aiyuk, he's been so much about the money that he would just thumb his nose to a deal if you had, let's say $30 million a year on the table. But maybe he feels like he can get that from Pittsburgh. Now, is Pittsburgh willing to offer that kind of money? Or are they still trying to work out the money? And you can also say, you can read these reports with the way the world works nowadays. You could look at these reports and you can say, hey, look, maybe this is just Brandon Aiyuk and Brandon Aiyuk's team trying to drive up the financial price for him. Maybe the Browns and the Patriots have an offer on the table and they're willing to pay Aiyuk X amount of dollars, and Aiyuk is trying to soak every penny out of a deal, and so he's now trying to put it on the Pittsburgh Steelers to up their offer. We have no idea. We have no clue what the nature of these reports actually are. And so when you start to look at the what, the who, the why, it's going to be fascinating. Number one, if Aiyuk gets traded in the first place, and number two, if he gets dealt, where he gets dealt. And did he get dealt to that destination because that's where he wanted to go and not because the other teams didn't put a great offer on the table. And what I would say is this: get ready for it, right? I mean, get ready for people to react. And I'm talking about certain people in the media. I will guarantee you this will happen. If Aiyuk ends up going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, there are going to be people that frame this as if Elliott Wolf lost. And that's not necessarily the case, because you cannot force Aiyuk to come to New England. If he doesn't want to come to New England, if he wants to go to Pittsburgh, he's going to force San Francisco to move him to Pittsburgh. Unless San Francisco decides, you know what, we're not moving you at all. We're keeping you here. We're keeping you in-house. Deal with it. But if they do deal Aiyuk, Aiyuk has leverage. Aiyuk has a say. Because unless he puts his name on a contract, unless he signs that piece of paper and says, I'm going to be with you for several years, a team is not going to trade what San Francisco wants them to trade to them for Aiyuk. It's just not going to happen. You have to have more than a handshake deal on this. If you're Elliott Wolf, if you're anybody, if you're Andrew Berry with the Browns, whoever you are, if you're Khan with the Steelers, before you make a trade like this, you want to make sure the guy is all in with you. You don't want to put $30 million a year on the table, trade some draft capital for a guy who's going to run out the door as soon as possible. You don't want that. So Aiyuk does have leverage. And if he's willing to play hardball and he's willing to push people on this, he will force his way to where he wants to go. Unless San Francisco is willing to push back, which I had this conversation today with Evan Lazar at Patriots camp. I understand football. I've said this the entire time. I thought Aiyuk would be staying in San Francisco. I thought the Niners would get something done. And maybe they do end up getting something done. You know, maybe this is a situation. And by the way, Mike Reese just reported that the Patriots have placed second-year guard Jake Andrews on injured reserve, ending his season. So that Jake Andrews pick looks like a complete waste in last year's draft. But I was talking to Evan today, and I said, I understand from a football standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world that the Niners would hold on to Aiyuk. But if Aiyuk wants to be difficult, if Aiyuk wants to be almost impossible to deal with, do the Niners look at him and say, you know what, we have weapons, we've got this offense, we've got this defense, coaching staff is great, we're ready to go, we're ready to make another run. We don't need a malcontent. We don't need somebody who's going to get in the way of this operation. If it becomes personally tough, and if Aiyuk is willing to make it personally tough, then you could see that trade happen. I've got more thoughts on Aiyuk. Before I get to those, don't forget to give us that like. If you're watching on Twitter, if you're watching on Facebook, like this podcast, especially if you're watching on YouTube. Give us that thumbs up. Slap that algorithm right in the face. Drop kick it in the neck. Like, comment, and subscribe. Trying to hit 3,500 subscribers. We're getting closer to that number. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Pods, rate and review. I fully believe, with 100%, with every fiber of my being, I feel like Elliott Wolf is trying as hard as he can to trade for Brandon Aiyuk. And I feel that way because we've had several reports now. You go back to the draft. He was trying to deal for Aiyuk. Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, reported that the Patriots offered this past year their second-round pick in the draft, which was the second pick in the second round at number 34. They offered that pick to the Niners for Aiyuk, and they were willing to pay Aiyuk $27, $28 million per year to make that deal happen. The trade did not happen. The Niners wanted more. Now you fast forward to what's going on over the last week or two with Aiyuk. And one of the teams that has consistently been part of this conversation, that have been hunting down Aiyuk, willing to pay the money, willing to trade some draft assets. One of the teams that has been a consistent with this story has been the New England Patriots. I feel like Wolf is trying to get Aiyuk here. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at what happened with Calvin Ridley, the willingness to put $40 million of guaranteed money on the table for somebody like Ridley. Wolf has been trying to acquire a number one wide receiver since he took this job. He tried with Ridley in free agency. He tried to move up from the second round into the first round as soon as he figured out that the Niners were not going to take that second-round pick for Aiyuk. He tried to move up into the first round to draft, reportedly, Xavier Legette and have him be their number one receiver. Since that didn't happen, Wolf has been circling back with the Niners trying to acquire Aiyuk. So I am very confident that Wolf is trying. He's trying to execute this. He's trying to get this done. But if Aiyuk wants Pittsburgh, there's only so much that you can do. Aiyuk has to want to be a Patriot long term. You're not going to make the deal. You're just not going to make that deal if he is not willing to fully commit to you for several years. Because that would just help kill the rebuild that you're in the middle of the process trying to make work. It just wouldn't make any sense. Now, if the Patriots were able to make this deal and they executed a trade for Aiyuk, that changes this wide receiver room and that changes this offense. I'll tell you, I've been to 4 padded practices. I'll get to what I saw today a little bit later on in this podcast, but I've been to 4 padded practices the last, 7 days, okay? I was there Monday, Tuesday. I was there Friday. I was there today. And I can tell you, there's some life with this offense. I said it on 98.5 The Sports Hub yesterday. I feel differently about this team than many other people do. I think the offense has shown progression. I think the offensive line, the top 5, that's a big caveat. I'm talking about the starting offensive line when it's been healthy. Chooks has been out the last couple of days, but I feel like the offensive line has progressed. And if you could go out and land somebody like Aiyuk, a true number 1 wide receiver, you now start to look at this wide receiver room, and everybody slots into the position. You've got Aiyuk at X as your number 1. You've got Jalen Polk at the Z as your number 2. You've got Pop Douglas in the slot as your number 3. And then you look at guys like KJ Osborne, Javon Baker, Jalen Reagor, Tyquan Thornton. Those other guys fill the rest of your wide receiver room 4 through 6. So now 1 through 6, you feel actually pretty good about your wide receiver core. But on top of that, you now look at the offense in the big picture. You've got Aiyuk, you've got Polk, you've got Pop. You've got Javon Baker, hopefully pushing, right? And then you move towards the tight ends. You would have Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. Henry has looked really good the last week of practice. Looks like he's got a little bit more juice this year. And then you've got Ramondre Stevenson as your running back, Antonio Gibson as your third down back. Now it's not bananas to think that that offense could actually produce legitimately and consistently. Aiyuk, Polk, and Pop, Henry and Hooper, Stevenson and Gibson. That is not bad. That is not bad at all. That is a hell of a lot more talent than this team has had on the offensive side for a number of years. So if you could go out there and get somebody like an Aiyuk, it would fill out the rest of this offensive roster beautifully. It would make so much sense. The one question I have is, how do Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo feel about this offense? Do they feel like this offense is in position to do more this year than they might have thought going back 2 weeks ago? How has the padded practices changed the math for Mayo and Wolf? Has it changed the expectations at all? Do they think a little bit more highly of the guys they have on the field? Do they think they need to add more to the guys than they have on the field? We don't know. But have these padded practices changed the dynamic of the thought process of both Wolf and Mayo, or maybe just one of the two guys? So it'll be a very interesting situation to unfold, to see how this all comes about. Does Aiyuk get traded? Does he go to Pittsburgh? Does he get seemingly his wish to go to the Steelers, according to multiple people now? Does he get to his preferred destination in Pittsburgh? Or does something else happen and the Patriots all of a sudden, they kind of vault and you end up getting Brandon Aiyuk as a New England Patriot? And how much of an impact would that have? I think it would have a tremendous impact on this offense overall and how the pieces get put together from there. There's no doubt you're missing a number 1 wide receiver. Ayuk's a guy that is classified, and I think he is a true number 1 wide receiver. If you fill that hole, if you fill that vacancy, now everything else looks better. Now you feel a lot better about the ability to explode every once in a while offensively because you brought somebody in with that talent of Brandon Aiyuk. Does Aiyuk end up in Cleveland? Does Cleveland trade Amari Cooper, which has kind of been thrown out there as a possibility? Do they go out and trade Cooper in a draft pick or two and they get Aiyuk? I don't know. But I think Aiyuk would be a tremendous fit to this offense. You think about Alex Van Pelt. You think about that West Coast offense, the Shanahan branches and all of that. Think about it. Aiyuk plays in San Francisco. He plays for Kyle Shanahan. He's been a perfect fit within that offense. And now you look at it, Alex Van Pelt will be running a very similar offense, or at least he will use a lot of what has been used in the past by Shanahan and McVay and others. And now you just kind of plug and play Aiyuk. He's a perfect fit for that system. He knows the scheme. He knows most of the scheme. I'm sure the verbiage would be a bit different, but it wouldn't be a huge transition from one team to the other. Look at Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne, if he's healthy, he gets back onto the field. I have some pretty decent expectations for Bourne because he played out in San Francisco for Shanahan. It's not a huge thing for him to transition to this Alex Van Pelt offense. All right, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. All of those things mean an awful lot to this program. If you like what we do, it is the alternative. We give you another option here in New England. Sports talk, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We talk Patriots. 11 a.m. is what we had done. We've now moved these to 4 p.m. during practices. We'll see where we settle once these practices are over. But don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. I'll get to Matthew Judon in a minute or so. But first, Charlie sends a super chat. I see a lot of comments rolling in. If you want to jump to the front of the line, the way you do that is you send a super chat. It gets starred to me, and I pull you right on up to the screen. How many games would you hypothetically think Aiyuk would be worth in the win column this year? It's a very good question. It's a difficult question. I don't think he would add, 3 wins, 4 wins. That's way too much for one player. But I do think he makes you better offensively by a decent margin. I do think he makes you even more competitive by a decent margin. But I look at this as not only a short-term play, Charlie. I look at it as also a long-term play. Bringing Aiyuk in, what does that do for somebody like Drake May? How much does that speed up his development? How much better does that make the young quarterback when he's finally ready to take over as QB1? What does Aiyuk do for Jalen Polk and Javon Baker? Takes a little bit of the pressure off those guys, right? Allows them to develop at a nice, necessary rate. So it's not just, he impacts this many wins. It's the idea of how he makes you better, how he makes the offense more competitive, and how long-term he will play a role within the fabric of this offense. He will be a foundational piece to this rebuild. And he would help guys out like Drake May, like Polk, like Baker, and others. So I think you have, you look at it this year, but you also look at the long-term part of it. And I appreciate the $5 super chat again. You can send a super chat just like Charlie did, get you to the front of the line with your comment or your question. It also, let's not overlook this, helps me financially, which I'll never turn down. So I appreciate every single one of you. All right, let's get to Matthew Judon here. That's the Brandon Aiyuk portion of the pod. The other part of the news today was Matthew Judon spoke at practice or after practice. And my first thought is, why was he speaking today? Why is Judon even speaking to the media? Gerard Mayo came out late last week and he said, we're putting this behind us. It's in the rearview mirror, right? We're moving forward. I'm moving on. I'm not really addressing this Judon thing anymore. We're moving forward. We're making progress. We're paying attention to other things. We need to put this in the rearview mirror and move the hell on with what we're trying to accomplish. And then all of a sudden today that changed, because all of a sudden you had Judon speaking with the media today after practice. Why? If you want to put it in the rearview mirror, why is Judon out there speaking to the media once again? Why is he answering questions about this stuff? Why? If you truly want to put it in the rearview mirror, put it in the rearview mirror and just drop it. It's over. As a matter of fact, I would argue that leading into today, a lot of the speculation out there in the ether the last couple of days was positive. A lot of people saw Judon practice on Saturday, including Greg Bedard, my buddy at BSJ. Greg said, wow, Judon was in a great mood on Saturday. Almost came across as a guy that might be getting money soon. People looked at Judon. They looked at his, comportment on the field Saturday and how he had great energy, how he was helping his teammates, doing this and that. He ran for 40 yards at one point and tried to tackle a running back or whatever the hell it was. The speculation was throughout the last couple days that, hey, maybe the Patriots and Judon are getting closer. I did a segment yesterday on 98.5 The Sports Hub, and I mentioned this. You got to give credit to Mayo and Wolf for saving this situation because this looked really ugly last week, and they were able to get him back on the field, and he was not only back on the field, but he was participating, and he was participating with energy. And so I thought all of the stuff that we had spent talking about last week, it had turned. It had turned towards the positive. Diana Rossini came out and said she thought that Judon and the Patriots were getting closer. All of a sudden, this went from a situation that a lot of us thought could be absolutely off the rails, and then all of a sudden it changed. All of a sudden it changed the last few days because of what Judon was doing on the practice field, and people were feeling a little bit more positive about it, that the Patriots had spun this thing. The Patriots had changed the quote-unquote narrative. And then you let Matt Judon speak today. And he said some things that would make you feel maybe not so positive about this. So now you feel like you're getting kind of dragged back to the negative. I just don't know why the Patriots allowed him to speak to the media. I don't know why you would put a microphone in front of him and have him pontificate about what's going on and why he did what he did last week. That practice was what? Last Monday. It's a week ago. It's a week ago. That is now history. Why are you bringing this back up a week later? It makes no damn sense to me. No sense whatsoever. So here are some things that Judon said. The reason why he had left the field and came back and spoke with Elliot Wolf and Matt Groh was because of a quote-unquote message that he received. He got a message which made him go back onto the field and talk to Wolf and Groh about said message. What was the message? I have no idea. Who sent the message? I have no freaking clue. But that's what Mayo said. That's what Judon said, that after the conversation with Mayo, he went off the field. He got some kind of message when he was back in the facility, and then he went out and spoke to Wolf and Groh. Now, as far as how animated he was throwing his hands up, all that stuff. He said he just speaks with his hands, which I thought was weak. As far as why he's practicing now, again, think about what people were saying before today. Think about what they were saying on Saturday. Think about what they were saying yesterday. It was all kind of leaning towards the positive. It had positive vibes. Oh, Judon's out there with great energy. Looks like he's enjoying himself. Looks like he's truly with the program. Maybe they're getting closer on a contract. Maybe the tide has turned. And then Judon goes out there today and says, I've been practicing because I'm obligated to practice. Doesn't sound like a guy who's, doing cartwheels onto the field and can't wait to get out there. He told the media today, the reason why I'm out there is because I'm obligated, and said, I don't want money taken out of my pocket. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said. I lose money. I lose money if I'm not out there. So it's my obligation to be out there. So he certainly did not sound like a guy who was getting closer to the contract terms that he wants with the team he's been talking with. It did not come across that way whatsoever. So now, again, you're back to square one. And you just took something that you had spun to the positive to, here we go again. He's still not happy with his contract. And he's only out there due to an obligation. He's not out there because he truly wants to be out there. He's out there because he has to be out there because the Patriots have told him, you got to be out there. And we go back to the contracts in the NFL, and we talk about how the NFL and the ownership, every single team, they have the leverage in contracts, right? For the most part, because once you sign a deal, you are signed to that deal. And if you don't show up, they will fine you. That's what makes it difficult for Aiyuk to get back to him. If he's going to try to draw that line, they'll say, look, the Niners will say, if you don't come out here, you don't practice, you don't play, you're not going to get paid. We are going to fine you tens of thousands of dollars every day you miss a practice. Every day, you're not out here with your teammates. So Judon knows that. The Patriots know that. And by the way Judon handled today's, media session after the practice, the way he dealt with the media session today tells me that the Patriots drew a hard line and said, if you're not out here, you're going to get fined. You are contractually obligated to be on this field. And if you're not on this field with your teammates, we are going to fine you by the letter of the CBA. That's how it feels to me, which is much different than what was being said over the weekend of, hey, he's out there because maybe they're getting closer. Now, as far as the back and forth, what happened last week, Judon said, quote, just because we don't agree doesn't mean we don't understand each other's side. In plain English, Judon is telling you, we don't agree. Like, it happened last week because we don't agree. And, that was then. It doesn't sound like they agree much now. Judon came out and said that he's worth more than $6.5 million. He's worth more than 6.5. So he's telling you, I am not happy with what I'm getting paid. I am only on the field at practice because I am obligated to be on that field because they're going to fine me. That conversation has obviously happened between player and team. And Judon's not thrilled about it. And so I just feel like you had done a great job with damage control and you had made some positive vibes out of a bad situation over the last couple of days after what happened last Monday. And then you just, for whatever reason, decided to put a little gasoline on the fire today and let him speak to the media. And now we're all asking the same questions we were asking last week. Is this going to be too much of a distraction? Is Judon going to fully play ball if this continues? Could this get ugly again? What's going to happen? Like, all of these questions had been settled down. Things had quieted a little bit between Judon and the Patriots. And now after he speaks to the media today, those conversations are getting amped up again. I don't know how this helped. I don't know how this helped the Patriots. I don't know how it helped Judon. It helped the sports talk shows because now they've got more content. But I don't know how this helped. And I don't know why you let him go out there and talk today. I don't know why. Now, he did say he wants to retire here, which he has said before. But he also made sure to let everybody know I've got 1 year left on my contract. I've got 1 year left. So he doesn't sound like he's thrilled right now. He sounds like he's a guy who is going out there and doing his job because he has to do his job, because if he doesn't do said job, he's going to get fined. That pisses him off. He's going to lose more money, and so he's going to be out there. But this is not, hey, I'm a happy camper, let's roll. At least not right now. Now, he was asked about the social media stuff. He did not want to answer the social media stuff. I have to imagine that's because he looked foolish when he said he doesn't run his own Twitter, and then he instinctually reacted to Diana Rossini's report last week and used me in his post, which made it obvious he was sending the tweet. So today, he learned from last week, he did not talk about social media. They asked him why he didn't practice last week, a couple days. He said he had something going on. Don't know if it's an injury thing. Don't know if it's personal. Don't know if it was this business stuff going back and forth, but he said he had something going on. Now, maybe he's being coy. And maybe a week from now, maybe a few days from now, we'll find out that Judon got a contract extension or the Patriots were able to work something out where he's going to stay with the team this year and then enter free agency next year. Anything is possible. I just don't know what you accomplished today by throwing him out there in front of the media. I would not have done that. I would not have done that. Your head coach went out there last week and said, this is over. If it's over, let it be over. I don't get it. All right, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. More eyeballs to the product. They happen because you You take a second of your time and you give us that thumbs up. Doesn't cost you any money. Takes a second of your busy day to just click that thumbs up on YouTube or like us on Twitter, like us at Facebook, rate and review on Spotify and Apple Pods. All right, let's get to some practice observations. I was back at padded practices today, and let me first say this. It was a very weird practice. Well, what the hell do you mean by that, Nick? Well, what do you mean by it was a weird practice? It was a, hey, we're working on things type of practice. That's how it looked to me. The offense was working a lot on the run game. Didn't look great. Run game did not look great today, but the offense was working on the run game. There were a lot of handoffs today. A lot of handoffs. Not a ton of opportunities for any of the quarterbacks to throw the football with consistency today. So you had a lot of run game. Looked like they were trying to set up the run game for Thursday night. So you saw a lot of that. You saw a lot of goal line. You saw some goal line offense from the 2-yard line today. That was different. So they're working on goal line. They're working on specific situations. There were some team periods today where the team was really going half speed. And so it was kind of a funky, clunky practice. You had half speed periods. You had, okay, we're going to work on stuff. There was one period or a couple of periods where it was obvious that the Patriots offensive line was working on like combo blocks, because what they were doing was you'd have one half of the defensive line not rush while the other half rushed. So they were trying to work combo blocks and all sorts of different things, and they were giving some blitz looks. So they were working on a lot of stuff today. It was not a very exciting practice. If you were out there, you know what I'm talking about. If you missed it, you honestly did not miss much. There wasn't a hell of a lot going on, but there were still things that we could see and that I think that were important. So let's get into some of those. The offense opened up their bag a little bit today. So as much of the run game as was paid attention to, the offense did, Alex Van Pelt did open up the bag a little bit. There was some trickery today. Trickery on the field. There was more motion than we had seen before. So now you're starting to see some of the motion elements brought into this offense. The goal line was very interesting because the goal line had 2 defensive linemen slotted as the fullback. The first period, right, with Jacoby Brissett at the goal line, had Keon White as your fullback. Interesting, right? Keon White played tight end at ODU before, he transitioned. He left ODU, went elsewhere, and then changed to defense. But he had some time at ODU playing tight end. So he's out there. He was playing some fullback today. And I'll tell you what, the first rep with Keon White as the fullback, he absolutely smoked Jelani Tavai. He threw Tavai out the club. Keon White abused Tavai. I don't know if Tavai got the license plate on the truck, but the first snap, the first goal line snap was a run play, and White absolutely just took Tavai out of the play. Second play, it was a play action, and they actually threw it to Keon White. He caught it, but then he got hit, and with the contact, the ball popped up, ended up being an interception. So you saw some more trickeration. You saw more motion. You saw Keon White. You also saw Jeremiah Farms. With the second unit, Jeremiah Farms was out there in fullback. So you saw some defensive linemen playing fullback on the goal line. There was some extra behind the line of scrimmage. I won't get into too many specifics, but there was some extra going on behind the line of scrimmage with the offense that involved multiple players. Hopefully you're picking up what I'm putting down. So we saw for the first time, really, Alex Van Pelt adding some wrinkles, doing some fun stuff in the backfield area. So that was cool. The other thing that stood out to me today, and I've got more notes for you, but one of the things that really stood out was this was a physical practice at times. Now, again, they were working on a lot of things, but there were 3 or 4 11-on-11 periods where it was very physical and very intense. The intensity in this practice ratcheted up as it went on. And one of the things that stood out like a sore thumb was that the fact that the Patriots were, they were tackling guys to the ground. Now, it wasn't, I'm going to smash you and, just drill you across the middle. But, a lot of these run plays, Guys were tackling. Guys were taking down Stevenson to the ground. They were taking down Antonio Gibson. At one point, it looked like Gibson got a little bit of a stinger, was shaking out his hand, got looked at by a trainer, seemed to be okay. But there was physicality today. There was actual tackling. So I don't love that in certain cases. Del Pettis, who I'll talk about a little bit later, undrafted free agent safety. There was one moment that I hated to see. Hunter Henry catches the football across the middle, and I forget who wrapped him up, but somebody wraps him up. And then Del Pettis ends up jumping on top of Henry, and Henry kind of awkwardly fell. And I could just kind of envision disaster happening. The last thing you need is Hunter Henry to blow out his knee because an undrafted free agent rookie decides to jump on top of him during a practice, and he awkwardly collapses to the field. That would have been an absolute disaster. An absolute freaking disaster. I mean, you know, when you look at what's going on with this team, you can't afford to have somebody who, you know, is as important to your team as a Hunter Henry. You cannot afford that guy to suffer a serious injury at a practice because, you know, an undrafted free agent decided to go a little bit too much. You can't do that. Now, I see KJ By saying Pittsburgh has acquired Aiyuk. I'm going to wait and be a little bit more patient with it until somebody jumps in like an Adam Schefter or somebody like that and says that he is officially going to the Steelers. When that happens, if that happens, we'll talk about it. But back to the practice. So it was a little bit more physical today. Some of that I was not a big fan of. Jacoby Brissett, Drake May, neither were great. But again, the way the practice went, they did not have a lot of opportunity to be great, right? Like it became very interesting to see, you know, all of these things that they're working on stuff, the run game, the goal line, the half speed periods. They didn't throw the football a ton, so it's not as if Drake May and Jacoby Brissett had a great opportunity consistently today to make plays. So neither quarterback was great, but I don't think it's because they weren't great individually or they had a bad practice. I just thought the way the practice went and how it happened and kind of the flow of the practice impacted the quarterbacks. There wasn't a ton of opportunity. I will say Drake May let it rip a couple times downfield, which was, you know, very nice to see. It was very nice to see. One of those throws downfield was pretty much dropped by KJ Osborne. May threw it downfield, and you had KJ Osborne kind of slow down as he was running his route downfield, and then he tried to speed up, and by the time he reached out, the ball hit his fingertips and fell to the ground. It was more to the middle of the field, so it wasn't an exact look like the play in Vegas when Devontae Parker dropped the football in Vegas near the sideline. This play wasn't near the sideline, but it was similar where, you know, it went off of his fingertips. It went off of Osborne's fingertips. If Osborne kept running down the field, I think May hits him for a big gain, and everybody's talking about that play. So May did let it rip. I would like to see Drake May get some reps, you know, get him a period or two with the ones. I think that would be a good idea. I'd love to see May out there to get at least one period with the starting offensive line and some of the receivers that are higher up on the depth chart. We have not seen that. I was hoping it would happen today. It did not happen today. Now, maybe as a disclaimer, I will say this. Maybe the Patriots are not giving May reps with the ones because maybe he's going to play a lot in the preseason while Brissett doesn't play. So maybe this is all part of the plan where May will go out there. He'll play more with the ones in the starting offensive line as they get reps together. Maybe the Patriots will play. Maybe Gerard Mayo will play the starting offensive line and the rookie receivers, and they'll give May the shot to work with those guys while Brissett stands on the sidelines. If that's the plan, then it makes a little bit more sense. I would still like to see Drake May get some reps, or at least a rep, a period with the ones. Articular Pack 6, $5 super chat. Thank you. Nick, do we fit Pop and Poke for gold jackets now and get Baker as golden popcorn after they won their 4th Super Bowl? Love the work you do. I'm not going to go that far. I'm not going to go that far. Polk has looked good. Baker has had his flashes, certainly. I said this on 98.5 yesterday. I think that Baker is going to be one of those guys where, he's gonna make some big plays, but he's also gonna have some quiet days. He's had some drops at practice. He's not always making plays. He might have a week where he's 5 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns or 1 touchdown, and then all of a sudden the next week he has 4 catches for 40 yards and mix in a drop. Baker's got a little boomer bust to him. He's got that big play mentality, but when he's not making big plays, he tends to drop a football every once in a while, and he could go missing for a little bit. So I think you look to Baker as that big play guy, and he'll have some big weeks, but I don't know if he's going to consistently get you 6 or 7 catches a week. He doesn't strike me as that guy. Polk is the more, I think, consistent, productive wide receiver in this offense. He'll be more of the possession wide receiver. I think he'll get more targets because of that. So I think week to week, Polk could be your guy of 4 or 5 catches for 60 yards. Baker is the guy that flashes for a big game every once in a while because he makes a play or 2 downfield. And then Pop is going to be your guy that, will play some gadget, but will also obviously play out of the slot. And he's dynamic with the football in his hands. And I'm sure Alex Van Pelt will do all that he can do to give Polk those chances to make those kinds of plays. So that's how the wide receivers look. I'm not fitting anybody for gold jackets. I'm still somewhat concerned, and thank you for the $5 super chat. I'm still somewhat concerned about Pop and his ability to stay on the field. I do think it's noteworthy that he's had a red contact jersey, non-contact jersey on throughout these practices, and I think the Patriots are managing him because he's not a big guy. He has that concussion history. He's had injuries. So I think they're managing him to make sure that he doesn't take unnecessary hits during practices because they understand he might not be a guy that can, take that consistent pounding at practice and then go out there and do something. So, but he was dominant Friday's practice, dominant. I talked about it on the pod last week. Offensive line depth is an issue. I'm here to tell you offensive line depth is an issue. When the top offensive line has been healthy, they've been good more than not good. They have looked better, absolutely better than last year's offensive line. They've looked better than 2022's offensive line. When the top offensive line has been out there, and what I would consider the top offensive line would be, Vidarian Lowe at left tackle, Sidy Sow at left guard, Andrews at center, Owenu at right guard, and then Chusa Okorafor at right tackle. Now, when Wallace was at left tackle, he also looked pretty decent. Didn't look great, but he looked decent. The interior offensive line has been very good. So, Andrews, Owenu have been very good. All of the focus right now for me is on the tackle position. And the question is whether or not they can get one guy out of the 4 or 5 tackles that they have. Can one of those 4 or 5 tackles at least give you average football? If you could get average football or a good football out of one of the 4 or 5 tackles that you have right now in camp, if you can get good football from one of those guys, your offensive line is going to be better. It's going to be better because you can help. You can help the other guy. I've said that from the beginning. If 4 of the 5 offensive linemen are average, if they're good, if they're doing their job, you can help the 5th guy. So I don't have many questions, honestly, about their interior. I think they're fine. I think they're really good from what I've seen. Sidy Sow has taken a step. Owenu has been a beast. He was, again, a freaking beast today. Owenu has been a monster. So Owenu, Andrews, Sow, I don't have any questions about those guys. It's all about the tackles. And so, Okorafor's missed a couple of practices the last couple days. So Calvin Anderson was at right tackle today. They flip-flopped the tackles a number of times. Seems like they're still trying to figure out who they truly want at the tackle spots. But all you need is one of those guys. If you could get one of Calvin Anderson, if you could get, Chooks, if you can get any of these guys, Caden Wallace, if one of those tackles can do the job, then you help the other tackle out and your offensive line is going to be okay. But the depth is an issue. As soon as one guy is out or 2 guys are out, not good. they'll be able. I think they'll be able to sustain at center because Nick Leverett's actually done a pretty good job. Andrews missed 2 or 3 practices last week because of his son. Leverett was thrown in as, the backup center, and he's done a pretty good job. So I think that they'll be okay with Leverett at center. But as soon as you see 1 or 2 of these tackles out, it becomes an issue. And, on Saturday, both Anderson and Chooks were out. Offensive line had some problems, especially when you get deeper into the O-line, right? And today, Okorafor was out again. And that second offensive line had a rough day. It was a rough day for the backup offensive line, which is the offensive line that's in front of May. That offensive line had some issues. So, I think the top line, if you're healthy, I think they can settle and have a pretty good offensive line. I think they'll be okay. If they could be healthy, they'll settle on that top 5. But as soon as 1 or 2 guys go down, watch out. And I don't think that's just a Patriots problem. I think a lot of guys, are going through this throughout the league that are coaching the offensive line, trying to find, do we have 6 guys? Do we have 7 guys? Do we possibly have 8 guys? Offensive line play across the league is just not good, specifically at tackle. It is just not good. So when you start to see 1 or 2 guys go down at that position, you start to hemorrhage a little bit up front. So you got to hope that they stay healthy. There were some breakdowns today. There were a couple breakdowns by the top offensive line, but the alarming thing was the second 5 in front of May. They did not have a great day. And you had Vidarian Lowe and Calvin Anderson today on the top offensive line. And Vidarian Lowe, look, I know how most of us feel about Vidarian Lowe. I will tell you that Lowe has looked pretty decent. I think he's looked better than you would expect him to look. Let's put it that way. Lowe has not been a mess at left tackle. He's had 4 straight practices now at left tackle. We'll see what it looks like on Thursday night. Christian Gonzalez. I know a lot of people have talked about Gonzalez, and early in practice, I must say, Tyquan beat him. He beat him in the red zone for a touchdown. And myself and a couple of other people watching the practice, we started to wonder, okay, well, do we put Gonzalez on the radar now? Because he's given up some plays in this camp. He's given up a number of plays. And you go back to last year's camp, he looked like a shutdown guy at camp pretty much. He was much better last year's camp than he's been in this year's camp. Although I will say, here's the good news. After giving up that play to Tyquan Thornton, Gonzalez played better. Gonzalez was much better after giving up that TD to Thornton. So I'm not alarmed yet about Christian Gonzalez. I think we keep an eye on it. He has not been as great as he was in last year's camp, this year's camp. Could be knocking off the rust. Could be he understands, more about himself and understands more about the league, and he's not pushing himself as much early on in camp and until he gets to the joint practices. But I thought to begin the practice, you see the Tyquan Thornton one-on-one in the red zone against him, and Thornton just beats him and gets the touchdown. You're scratching your head going, okay, wait a minute. Do we need to pay more attention to this Gonzalez thing? And then the rest of the practice, it was as if he was hearing people saying that from around the field. It was like as if he was hearing our conversations, and then he played much better later on in the practice. So it has been it's been more up and down for Gonzalez in this camp than last camp. Hopefully he gets, he finds himself, and, the practice today from about the midway point to the end, hopefully that's kind of him kicking it into gear, and he figures things out, and we have no worries. I still think he's just tremendously talented. So again, I am not panicked yet. I am not freaking out yet. It's just something to keep an eye on. Hopefully he stays up, because it's been a little bit more up and down. Del Pettis. Let me just share a word about Del Pettis. He is an unrestricted free agent who is playing safety for the Patriots. And I will tell you this. He was getting snaps. Del Pettis was getting snaps today. He's getting snaps at safety against the top offense. He was mixed in. He was mixed in with Jalen Hawkins. He played alongside Jabril Peppers for a couple of snaps. So I think the coaches like what they've seen from Del Pettis, and they're giving him an extra long look. Does it mean he's going to make the team? It does not mean he's going to make the team. Does it mean that he's going to, be a starter for this defense? It does not mean he's going to be a starter for this defense. But Del Pettis is a name. He's getting some snaps at safety, and he's getting some snaps at safety, towards the upper tier of the roster. So keep an eye, because I mentioned that because, number one, Marcus Jones was, again, not on the field today, which is frustrating. Again, Marcus Jones not on the field. He's missed the last couple of practices. We know his history. He was having a tremendous camp. And again, now he's missed several days of practice. And it's just so frustrating because the guy is so damn talented, and you see him on the field making plays, but he just has not been able to stay healthy. So hopefully Marcus Jones gets back out there sooner rather than later. But he is not a guy who has been able to stay on the field. He just hasn't been that guy, unfortunately, as talented as he looks. The idea of Marcus Jones has been much better than, the actual on-the-field play of Marcus Jones, because the idea is you see him all the time. But he's not been able to do that. So, number one, Marcus Jones not on the field again. And so now you're still searching at safety. But the good news is it feels like the Patriots are in a better spot this year to deal with safety, an injury to safety, because Jalen Hawkins had a good practice on Saturday. A lot of people like what they've seen from him. Gerard Mayo mentioned him with the media. So Jalen Hawkins has shown out pretty well. And then you've got Del Pettis, who's also out there. They've slid Jonathan Jones back to safety at times. So something interesting to pay attention to is that free safety spot. We talked about it a lot during the offseason. We talked about Justin Simmons. We talked about, would they move Jonathan Jones to the back? Would you see Marcus play more snaps at safety this year if he was healthy? So we spent a decent amount of time trying to figure out that free safety puzzle for the Patriots. Right now, it looks like, Jalen Hawkins is a guy to keep an eye on, and so is undrafted free agent Del Pettis. All right. I'm back on 98.5 Thursday, day of the number one first preseason game. The first preseason game's happening on Thursday. I am back on 98.5 on Thursday. I'll be working the midday show at Tim McCone from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m., which means this face for radio will actually be on NBC Sports Boston on Thursday from 10 to 2. So I will be doing that show on Thursday, but I'm back here on Wednesday at 4 o'clock for another podcast on the Patriots. If something breaks, I'll be all over it if it's Patriots related. Don't forget, before you leave, to like, comment, and subscribe. It means the world to me. That's how we build this community. Again, like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And you can rate and review at Spotify and Apple Pods. Everybody enjoy the rest of your Monday. Try to stay cool. Until next time, it's the Nick Cattle Show.